Good afternoon. It's Joyful Hermit. And what a last few days it's been. Ever since I had my neck injection, I have been for a good 2 days, everything was felt very off balanced. And something went wrong with the first attempt he had going into the C6 back here. And so that was very off-putting, to say the least. And he had a bleed, and it was painful, very uncomfortable. I'll say that. And I just had to keep repeating to myself that I knew that God was with me, and within myself, and because you don't know, what's going to happen. Then he said, oh, I need you to bend I was on my stomach on a special frame that they have you laying on. And it's better for people that have fused spines because it's very painful for me to ever be on my stomach. I don't. But I had to for this procedure, and it was a nice setup. They had very expensive, I'm sure, for the procedure. But he had the needle down in between but it was hitting something that wasn't coming up on the live scan. So I was told to, I had need to bring my chin down to my chest. And I had no clue. I just had to do it slowly. I had no idea. And he said it quickly, I need you to do this. I need you to do this. I'm having trouble, having a bleed, and can't get it in. And he got it in, but couldn't get it into a point where any medicine was flowing, where it was supposed to. And he says, I can't see. I'm hitting bone or hitting something, and it's not showing up on the scan. And so I didn't know, and it was painful having that needle down it's in the dural space around the spinal cord. And I was told not to move at all, which of course, common sense, but I had to move my chin and be very careful not to, raise up or move in a wrong direction. I had no clue what was going to happen. And the neck already is risk of stroke. But the lower part, he says, is not as high risk as the part that really needs it, which is the 2, 3, 4 area, the mid area. But I don't think we're going to do that because, well, I don't even know if I'll have this done again. So he had to abort that and then go into the C7. And that, he says, oh, good, it's flowing. And I could tell, it wasn't as bizarre, painful, and strange. But I realized in that moment, that a wrong movement, or if this didn't work, I could have, I'd be getting rid of the dogs. I would be getting rid of the house. I would maybe be paralyzed, stroke or something. So, but it wasn't that I coped with okay then. I mean, it was stunning. It was one of those experiences that you truly realize that we belong to God and God alone. And our fate, our life, our bodies are totally in God's hands. Totally. And His will. Nothing is our will. I mean, if we try to make it our will, we're going to keep running into roadblocks. Like the doctor, the surgeon realized, that he was hit a roadblock and he had to try something else then. And, and he says, I've got a bleed here. And then later, it's just sort of unnerving. He says, well, told the tech person, get her all cleaned up. And I knew I was a mess with the bleed, but I thought of people shot in the neck with bullets and things, and how some of them even live but are paralyzed. How horrible would that be? No control whatsoever over what happens to us. With, and a bullet, they don't know, it happens suddenly. they may not even have warning. Someone may just shoot in a passing car. So it was a marvelous experience in that way. It was, God was showing me his power and his might, and that I belonged to him no matter what. And I hadn't had anything quite like that since the death experience 38 years ago, or 37 years ago that was. Oh. Where I realized I'm dead. This is death. I'm dying. I was dead. I kept saying, I'm dead. I'm dead. And in my thoughts, as I was zooming out into the universe, it was just amazing. But that was exhilarating. There was no pain whatsoever. Everything was so easy. This was different. This was, and then to be told that I needed to pull my chin against my chest, bend it down so he could get more space to try to get the needle further in. That was so, I didn't like having to have that responsibility. But I had to just go in faith. And no, I just kept in my mind repeating, God is with me, God is with me. And when he did finally get it in, and without, it's painful, it's uncomfortable, all this pressure of fluid into your dural space of your cord, around your cord, it creates a pressure and a heat that is very, very strange. And, I just kept repeating, God is with me. I know you're with me, Lord. I know you're with me. So, and they kept asking, it was a way I wish they hadn't, because I had to utter something, because I didn't even want to move to speak. I just was trying so much to focus on God. But are you okay? Are you, are you here? Are you with, and checking and all. So it was, anyway, but the results of it were such that for 2 days I would get up and things would be very spatially disoriented in a very uncomfortable way. Trying to walk, trying to do anything. I would be nauseated from the sense. I wasn't like I was out of balance, but anyway, and this is not even major. I thought, oh goodness, people. I was grateful then that my surgeon says my neck is in a way too bad to have neck surgery. He says only if I'm at life or death is he going to operate on it, because so much is wrong with my neck. And in part, it's from the accident also, but it's from one of my ecstasies in 2012, the first Friday of Lent, early evening Mass. Had my little sign, do not touch, do not worry, meditating, because I wasn't supposed to say anything with the E word, with ecstasy to anyone. But a Catholic lawyer, so when I went to, for my will and things, said, you need some protection, you need something. He says, it isn't right that you can't say anything to anyone. I was getting injured, and so I got injured again, my neck. I was out for 8 weeks, had terrible concussion. I would try to type, and the letters of words would be all jumbled, out of order. Hard to talk for a while, and I would just have to lay on the sofa, prop like this and just keep my head still. Very painful, because they were messing with me. People were, despite the sign. I even had a couple friend there who they finally figured it out, that something spiritual was going on with me, and they asked me, and I said yes. I said, I'm not supposed to answer questions. Well, that's fine, but we finally figured it was. And the husband admitted that he had been envious. He's such a good soul. He said, I've been envious of you, and I'm sorry. And he says, I realize what you've been put through. I would never endure, and I would never want it. So I don't want to. But he says, I always thought, if I could just experience at one time, just to experience what you're experiencing in this ecstasy, or they called state, or whatever they called it. But he says, no, he says, I realized I wouldn't want to be put through what you're going through, what they're doing to you. And, but they were there, and why they didn't come back. But they were coming back from communion, I guess, and saw what was going on. And it was Father Vincent who had that mass. He had only been there a couple of months, and I had just had him over to my hermitage for soup on Shrove Tuesday, the night before Lent start, Ash Wednesday, so like 3 days before. And we hit it off. It was so much fun, and I realized I had all the books that his founder, Venerable Lieberman, had written, and got those out, and I started reading the biography of Venerable Lieberman, so we hit it off very well. But yes, he said that he was elevating the host when it happened, and he knew that I was injured, that my neck was in a very awkward position, and so these things happen. But I'm going through a situation now of discerning spirits, of discerning the spirits, especially of the devil, in situations going on in my life. And I'm trying to know God's will. I believe in living God's will, being in God's will. And so, a viewer had mentioned Louisa Picaretta, a servant of God. I think she's servant of God. I don't think she's blessed yet. And I hadn't looked her up for quite a while, because the last time I had, there were some concerns that they were still reviewing her quite a bit. And so I didn't get too involved. But I know that Padre Pio is known to have said that she would be accepted at some point in time. And what she learned from God is about the divine will, of God's will, of living in God's will. So I looked it up recently, just a few, maybe last week, and it's just recently been a little more acceptable by the church. And I have no problem with it at all. Why should I? I believe in living in God's will, asking God's will, asking Him to keep me in His will, and doing His will always. And so that's where I am right now, is that I'm not sure that some things are His will, are God's will in my life. And so I'm pursuing that, spiritually praying about it, and discerning the spirits, because there are certain things to look for when we're discerning, if something's of God or if something is not. And there's generally peace and joy, and the doors open, things go fairly smoothly. After a certain point, you can have obstacles if it's God's will, but not to the point where it can involve evil or ugliness, any of the vices, things that would hallmark the devil, lying, just any of the vices, envy, pride, all of that. So that's something to learn about, how to discern if something is God's will or not. And then if it's not His will, we just don't go forward with it. Do not proceed. And keep praying about it, but put it on hold to start with, until you get however long it takes you to discern. Is this of God or is this not of God? And if it's not of God, who's linked to it? Who's linked to it? Is it a person? Is it a person's idea? Is it something that a person's doing or their way? Then examine that carefully, because the person could be in God's will or maybe not. You don't know. Have to discern that. Or if you start seeing signals that the devil is anywhere around it, in any aspects of what has happened, clear out. Clear out. God does not expect us to be beleaguered by the devil nonstop. Sometimes we are to experience and endure for a while, to experience what the devil is trying to do, so that we learn by experience what is the devil and what is not, what is of God and what is not. But for an extended period of time, say if the devil is in a spouse, you try to work through that, pray, try to get the person to go get counseling with your minister or your priest, psychologist, a Christian psychologist. That doesn't work. If the person gets worse and more oppressive, ugly, vile, evil in any kind of ways, and I don't use that word lightly, and I'm not talking about evil as far as being evil in actions and demonic things, but evil in a way of vice, of ugliness and mercy. Come over here. Yeah, she's so sweet. Mercy's such a sweet little girl. So anyway, but yeah, so you have to sort of discern, what type of ugliness is going on with others, or what type of vice it is, what type of sin is going on. And some of the vices, it can move into evil and into more of a demonic situation, not being theatrical or anything like that. It's a reality. And I know the person is very interested in Louisa Picaretta, was, saying things about the divine will and being the divine will and this and that and the divine will. Yes, live in God's will. But was giving different things that you need to say or need to pray or this or that. If you want to, yes. But it can be just as simple as training yourself, training your mind, your heart, your body, your soul to always pray. Ask God, ask your angel, help me be in God's will, always. It doesn't have to be a formula prayer. It can be if you want. Just saying how easy it is to try to place ourselves in God's will through prayer. And it can be a very simple prayer. It's very simple. Like I was when I was on that gurney thing, I know you're with me, God, you're with me. I know you're with me. And whatever you want will happen, turn over yourself to God. And that's being in God's will. And trust that you're in his will. And now, somebody had mentioned this thing that if we say we're in God, or we pray, or we place ourselves in God's will, always, we say that, yes, that the devil will flee from us. Well, maybe not. It depends on God's will. Because God can allow the devil to taunt and attack and to pester. That's how we learn how to recognize the devil, recognize evil, recognize Satan and demons, legions, as Jesus talks about the devil in Scripture. So it's not something that isn't a reality. It is. And we learn how to deal with it. And sometimes the devil will flee. In just today's scripture, the apostles or disciples were a little bit bothered. Well, why can't we just cast out these demons? Or do you want us to go, cast out these demons? And it takes great faith to be able to cast demons out. I have prayed and tried to cast demons out when I've been besieged for a long, long time. But it has to be God's will, not the fact God's will that Lovey. Now I've got Lovey up here. Not that it is that, God gives us training in this. And if the person who is a tool of the devil does not want the devil out, has not yet recognized and admitted that I am behaving in evil ways, that I am lying, I am twisting, I am filled with pride, or whatever is going on in the person, or I'm being ugly and evil in that way, or I'm envious, any of the vices, that is an open door for the devil to walk right in and use people like we would use a screwdriver to screw something in or take something apart. Just uses that person, their mind, their soul, their emotions, whatever part, even their bodies at times, whatever part that person has allowed access to. Unwittingly, often, it starts by gradually developing or having a disorder, like borderline personality disorder, or sociopathic disorder, or narcissistic, any of the disorders. So it can happen. And if the person does not want to relinquish the evil, the negatives, then you can cast and cast all you want, or keep repeating, I'm in God's will, I'm in God's will. But if the other person and want to rid out that devil, the devil isn't necessarily going to leave, because it depends on God's will and that person's will. That's the other part of the equation. See, we're talking about not just our own soul, our own desire, our own relationship with God. So there's different facets involved. It's nothing to be frightened about. If we can't rid out the devil from our lives, from some situation, if we can't, we've placed ourselves in God's will, but someone else is still a tool of the devil and is still attacking us and isn't going to let go, in fact increases, is very, very drawn to being malicious. It's God's will if that devil's cast out. We have to rely on God to do that in many regards. And if not, then we have to discern, well, what is God's will for us now? Should we continue on with how we're living, or what activity we're doing, or whatever? Or should we depart? And when I had the possessed neighbor woman and her creepy husband who were threatening my life and putting voodoo heads in the yard, doing property damage and crystals, different new age things. Finally, and I had a protective order, and they were literally threatening my life several times. So the police finally, when my protective order was running out, puppies, hushy hush, they convinced me. Well, my kids already had wanted me out, but it was going to be a great problem, financially, and I had these beautiful gardens, but it wasn't so much anything temporal. It was that I was discerning, should I just be run off like this? Do we allow somebody to run us off, even the devil? If we're in God's will, conceivably, we should be strong against the devil. That depends on God's will. And God can use a situation with the devil if God wants us to move on. It's simple like that then. So the deputy said, you've got to move. You're not safe here. You're going to have to move. And, they're not going to move and they're not going to quit. And you're alone and there are 3 adults against you. They had an adult son with them too who was malign. So I had to take major losses and dig up every single thing that Mr. Starkey, that we had planted, and the pathways he put in, and it was just sad. It was sad that his beautiful labor, his artistic genius in creating that, and everything that I had planted, and I sold off as much as I could and gave away and hauled a lot across country to plant in the new place. And my son had graciously co-signed so I could get a place in advance to move this vast investment in beautiful landscaping. And it turned out great. They thrived where I moved, but it was a lot was lost also, and it was at great effort and sad, that the devil in a way won out on that. But I learned a lot, and God had me in a different location, and I didn't have to deal with, any time I would step out of potentially being shot at, because they should say, shoot your gun over at her, and different. It was it was incessant, demonic people, evil, and she'd become obsessed with me, and I admit, and the first deputy who finally talked me into getting the protective order, because I was fearful of retaliation and that it wouldn't work. Well, it didn't work much. It helped them, but they didn't stop at all. But I guess I felt a little more secure, even though I shouldn't have, because they kept it up. But anyway, I did what was recommended for me by the police, but it ended up that I learned a great deal, but I also realized that God doesn't always intend us just to stick around and be besieged constantly by the devil. He has reasons. God's will has reasons, God's reasons. And as I look back, the house would have been ideal for me for the rest of my life. It was 1 floor, little tiny place, all done, all finished, all moved into. Everything was finished. It was new, so I wouldn't have to do it. I would die before it need a new roof. And it was in my income range, on my low income. I didn't have to take risks like here, where things are more expensive. And I had my gardens all in. They were all finished. So, and everything was great except for constantly demonically assaulted evil. Ugliness, and she'd turned the whole subdivision against. That worked out well because I was a hermit and no one spoke to me. They were afraid of me. She'd put something in the newspaper. It's a long story. I talk about it in another video. But, and that worked out well. Toward the end, the one neighbor realized that she was the problem and felt so terrible and said, well, why didn't you say something? And I said, I figured if anyone would believe all that the person was saying about me, that they likely weren't my kind of people, not intended for me. And so I didn't, try to defend myself to neighbors. They would pull their dogs in if they'd be out walking, like I was going to kill their animals or something. And I had death threat letters. The postal inspector got involved and a detective got involved. And it was crazy. But finally, the one neighbor's a young woman, and her little girl for like 3 years never got to play outside if I were out. And I was out a lot in my gardens. But because of fear, I guess, that I don't know what they thought I was going to do. But so that was an interesting experience of being totally humiliated and put down, detracted, and people fearful of me, literally fearful. But it served my hermit life well. I had lots of solitude and quiet. But I probably had too much comfort there. I think God never did really want me to do that house. He had given me a dream beforehand, right at a point, it was right when they had staked out where it would be, and I could have gotten out of it and lost $1,000 in the down payment for the start of it. But I talked myself out of, I didn't discern the dream well. I put positive in the dream instead of taking it as it was. This neighbor man, a demonic leer, and laying in a coffin, grinning at me, leering at me, very negative. That I later thought, for pity's sakes, you should have known. And not to take it that, well, maybe he's going to die of cancer or something, because he was a smoker. I had driven by, I had never met him, but I saw him out smoking a lot. And I thought maybe the wife will need some spiritual comfort if he dies, since he was in a coffin. Well, that was just the darkness of him, that he was a dead soul, but alive, leering at me from his coffin. So, I misinterpreted, and also I was tired and I just wanted to get settled somewhere too. Just get settled, but it was not good from pretty much after the first 3 months from when I moved in. It was bad. And, or no, even before then, it was when I would go and, I was picking up some stones and she had an outburst at me, and I thought, well, just who knows, just had a bad day. I'm so trusting of people, and I look to the good in people. And I keep thinking, surely not, God will be fine and he'll help me and I'll win them over, because I'm an encourager type. I like to build up people. But no, this was bad. But then when he moved me, I ended up on this island and immediately had an issue with a neighbor who was trying to take part of the property through a loophole law called adverse possession. What are the odds? And that did, I just fell apart. I fell apart. And of course, I didn't let him, but I had to fight it. And I had to get a fence up and had a man come and put the fence up before he could get over to the mainland to file his paperwork in the court. So the fence, and it got ugly, but this fence man handled it with the neighbor. But they were angry with me then and never spoke to me again. And if they would ride their horses by, they would turn their heads the other way. And I thought, oh, good grief. But it was okay. I was a hermit. That place really trained me in hermit life, because it was a horrible situation. But God taught me through all these things. But I had to move on. And I'm facing that with these videos. because the devil has been using someone for 17 years now, into the 18th year, and the lying and the detractions, and it's not good for the person's soul. Today I offered to even die for the person, to offer my life for that person's soul to be freed from the devil that has attached to the person. But it's I hope God will take me up on it. Well, but it's not really probably a nice offering, because I'm so worn out and I've had a death experience. So see, I look forward to it. So I guess that's not a sacrifice, is it? Not a good one. But I'm praying for the person. I love the person. I forgive the person, and I totally understand why the person is doing this. Very threatened by me, very envious. And I realize I've had so many blessings that this person's never had. And that can be, and is probably very, very threatened that I might be canonically approved as a hermit, which I'm discerning that even with all of this mayhem, and seeing the type of person is is this law even God's will? Is this a law of God? Did God want this law? Or does he approve of the way it's been implemented? I don't know. I'm asking God to help me discern that also. Because I like honor. I was brought up character, nobility, character, honesty, truth, and the lies that are the twisting of anything that I say or whatever is just, well, it's sick. Of course, the devil's not a good person, not a good being. He is evil. But I have to discern, do I just keep plowing through, or does God want something else of me? Is God having this protracted assault that has increased in intensity where the other person isn't benefiting? That person's soul is getting in more and more trouble with God. So what do? I could protect that person by not doing the videos anymore or writing online. I did think that maybe now is the time God wants me to write some books. To start doing that, I've wanted to write books since I was 3 or 4 years old. So maybe I need to do that. And that's part of being in God's will. We don't know for sure. We have to cast the nets. So anyway, that's just what I've been going through with thinking. And of course, I've been very unwell after this neck thing. So I'm behind. I got to go out and mow, and I think I can do that. Hold on to the lawnmower and push it. It's very good for my spine to be on a slant like that. It's good for stenosis, but it's like pushing a cart, Anyway, God bless his real presence in us. Hope any little thing that I've talked about with dealing with the devil, and the devil is a reality, but it's nothing that you obsess over. You just have to learn to deal with it, and God gives us plenty of practice. Now, those people who are taken over by the devil will tend to not recognize the devil. They'll say, well, the devil isn't real, There may be a force of darkness or something, but that's because they're deceived themselves. They're blinded by it because the devil has them and is just having them justify the way they are treating other people or living their lives or lying or deceiving or justifying themselves, or filled with envy and pride, and they can't get away from it. They don't recognize it in themselves. It's always the person they're attacking. So, but that's just how we have to learn all these things in this life. And it can go either way. Sometimes God may want us to stick it out, but other times, as I have learned, he wants something else. And it's not that the next thing is going to be super, super much better. It'll be different. You won't have the devil through a neighbor lady getting on me, but I had all other kinds of trials that I had to learn and get through. Many of them, many attacks of bad things happening one after another that strengthened me, turned me to God all the more to get me through. A hermit is an extreme anomaly of humanity, and should be, anyway, living a life in such a way that the hermit has to become totally dependent on God in all matters. And that includes in discernment of spirits, but also in coping with getting through suffering and sickness alone, and in making your own way in life. I'm very much against people who charge people for spiritual counseling when, if God gives them spiritual insights, he gives them freely. So I don't really, I could say but it's how I was reared by my parents, and I'm grateful to have maybe a little ultra character, but honesty. But it's important to try to get by or to earn our money by the work of our hands if we must, or just live within our means of our disability if we're disabled, so that we can, which I had to do up until my mother passed. I had years that I had to just keep downscaling, selling things off, pick up whatever little jobs. I wrote a book once, Ghost wrote a historical novel. Well, it wasn't really a novel, a historical biography for somebody. They paid me to write for a relative who was a historical figure. So that's just me. That's my way of interpreting Canon Law 603 and the Catechism and plus you've already heard me talk about being hidden and being in solitude and silence. And I'm working now on more mental silence too, not to have my mind so busy. That's noise. So there's always something challenging in being a hermit or in being a Christian. But as I see and did a little review of what they call a review of the research of all the different canon law hermits, I think it's already pretty much a foregone situation of how they're living. I think all of them wear habits. They take on the titles. They're well-intentioned people. They pray. Go to Mass and pray the rosary often, or some of them do, and read the Divine Office, some of them do. But, I'm found a lot more who are living together, which stunned me. I didn't realize so many are doing that. But see, married couples, families, they pray the rosary. Some of them pray morning and evening office, Divine Office. They're doing the same as these hermits are, but they don't stand out like sore thumbs wearing a habit. So, I just don't get it, and I don't find it appealing or impressive as what I found when I did that. So I'm extra much discerning if the canon law is even of God, especially, and that one of the persons who's spearheaded a lot and has been written of in a major press, then further substantiates the path of dressing up and of taking a title and postnominal initials after the name, and then thinks it's okay to have other people living together. And there's a reasons why the Lauras in the Middle Ages stopped. Even the Carthusians say we're not hermits. They're a religious order. And that's what these people are, who are, say they're canonically approved, and they get canonical approval. And I think the bishops don't realize either, or whoever approved the people. One of their designees approved it. They don't realize that that's not solitude. Not technically, and not in essence either, and not in actuality. And the reason that these things are included in hermit life, and have been since the beginning of the hermit vocation, I mean, way back in the prophets and Old Testament and other religions even, is what the hermit learns and benefits from the starkness and the extreme of the vocation. So, and that's another thing I consider of maybe better that I would write books and anonymously than to be in the present moment speaking. So, and granted, what I say are what I have, through prayer and study, have come to, and through reading the law for years. 25 years I've followed what it says, and also the Catechism. Under Consecrated Life of the Catholic Church, section 920 and 921, they speak to the hermit consecrated life, the hermit vocation. So that's where you get the hiddenness, hidden from the eyes of men. And then, of course, there's other aspects, the penance, the praise of God, the silent preaching of Christ, of intimacy with Christ, which takes time. And talking about hermit life, like and this, now discerning the spirits was okay, but getting into temporal things, that doesn't so much have you get to know God intimately. It takes reading the scriptures and meditating on them, living them, and like yesterday, I was just laying here and calling out to God within me, going over matters and asking His will, and to help me to discern His will in this matter, in all these matters I've mentioned. When is it time to get ourselves out, away from an evil source, and flee the devil? Flee the devil. Sometimes that's what God wants. Because I can guarantee you, it's not a given that we're going to win against the devil. It just depends on God's will. And God, of course, God will handle the devil for us. That's the point, too. God will handle the devil. But sometimes He wants us to have the experience of doing the spiritual warfare, of learning the spiritual combat. I'm going to get that book out, Scupoli Spiritual Combat, because that's the one that is a classic in its basics. So I'll get that out. We'll talk about that another time then, maybe next video. God bless His real presence in us. Have a beautiful afternoon, evening, morning, whatever time period you're in.